In 2007, Ireland began releasing Norwegian eagle chicks into Killarney National Park, 245 of them over 18 years, onto a coastline that had not seen a white-tailed eagle in over a century. By August 2025, scientists tracking those eagles by satellite found something they were not expecting. The birds were not just surviving, they were not just breeding. They were showing up in places the program never targeted, building nests in counties hundreds of kilometers from the release sites, reorganizing food webs that had been running without an apex predator since before the First World War, and doing it entirely on their own terms. The official program is now over. What the eagles are doing to the Irish landscape is just beginning, and parts of it, researchers admit, they still cannot fully explain. This is the full story, from the extinction that erased these birds, to the 18-year gamble to bring them back, to what the satellite data is now revealing about how a single returned species can reshape an entire coast. Most videos about eagle reintroductions show the release footage and call it a success. This one follows the data 18 years deep, into the breeding failures, the illegal poisonings, the storms that destroyed nests, and the scientific evidence that is only now emerging about what happens to an ecosystem when its largest predator returns after a 100-year absence. Every claim in this video is sourced from Ireland's National Parks and Wildlife Service, Norway's Institute for Nature Research, and peer-reviewed monitoring data from 245 satellite-tagged eagles. This is not speculation, this is what the tracking records actually show. But before you can understand what the eagles are doing now, you need to understand what Ireland lost when they disappeared, and why bringing them back was one of the most ambitious wildlife gambles in European history. The white-tailed eagle is not a decorative bird. It is Europe's largest bird of prey. An adult weighs between 4 and 7 kilograms. Its wingspan can reach 2 meters 45, nearly 8 feet, the widest of any living eagle on Earth. Locals in Scotland nicknamed it the flying barn door because in flight, those broad rectangular wings make every other bird in the sky look like a toy. Its talons can carry prey weighing up to 8 kilograms. Its beak is built for tearing through hide and sinew. It mates for life, and a bonded pair will use the same nest for decades, adding sticks every season until the structure can reach 2 meters across and weigh hundreds of kilograms. In Iceland, a single nest has been in continuous use for over 150 years. But here is what makes the white-tailed eagle irreplaceable. It is both a hunter and a recycler. It takes fish by skimming low over water and snatching them with its feet. It hunts waterbirds, rabbits, and hares. It steals prey from other raptors. And critically, it scavenges dead fish, seabird carcasses, and sheep and deer remains. This makes the white-tailed eagle something more than a predator. It is a processor that closes the loop between death and nutrient cycling in coastal ecosystems. Later in this video, you will see what happens when that function returns to a coast that has been running without it for 100 years. The data is unlike anything researchers expected. But first, how Ireland lost these birds in the first place. When you remove an animal like the white-tailed eagle for a century, you do not just lose a bird, you lose a function. Ireland lost that function deliberately. Beginning in the early 1800s, as sheep farming expanded across the coast, the eagle was classified as vermin. Bounties were paid for dead birds. Nests were destroyed. Eggs were collected. Poison was laid on carcasses, a method so efficient it could kill every scavenger in a valley in a single season. The same story played out across Europe. By 1975, only about 500 breeding pairs survived in all of Western Europe. In Ireland, the last pair bred on the coast of County Mayo in 1912. After that, there was silence for nearly a century. What Ireland did next would take 18 years, cost millions, and depend entirely on the cooperation of a country 2,000 kilometers away, and it almost failed. Norway had protected its eagles in 1968, and the population recovered. By the 2000s, Norway hosted over 2,000 breeding pairs. It was the largest population in Europe. It had eagles to spare. Ireland came asking, and Norway said yes. The program was built on precise science. Chicks between 7 and 10 weeks old were collected from Norwegian nests, but only from clutches of 2 or 3, ensuring at least one chick always remained with the parents. They were flown to Kerry Airport, transported to purpose-built aviaries, and fed through hatches in the back wall so they would not imprint on humans. When their flight feathers developed and their strength was sufficient, the cage doors opened and the birds flew into Killarney National Park, chosen because its ancient oak and pine woodlands, quiet surroundings, and fish-rich lakes provided exactly what white-tailed eagles need to build those massive stick nests and raise young. Phase 1 ran from 2007 to 2011. 100 eagles were released. Then the waiting began because young white-tailed eagles spend 4 to 5 years wandering before they settle into a territory and find a mate. The question was not whether the eagles would fly, it was whether they would stay. What happened next took exactly 5 years, and it produced a coincidence so precise it almost seems scripted. In 2012, a pair of white-tailed eagles nested on Loch Derg in County Clare. It was the first successful breeding in Ireland since 1912. Exactly 100 years. The symmetry was theatrical, but every detail was verified by satellite tracking and field observation. In early May 2013, the first eaglets were born on Irish soil since the program began. 1 in Killarney and 2 in Clare. The village of Mount Shannon, sitting on the shores of Loch Derg, watched it unfold in real time. The nest was visible from the village. Thousands of visitors came, bird watchers, photographers, families who had never seen a raptor larger than a buzzard. The ecotourism impact was immediate. The pattern repeated at every subsequent nesting site. Eagles arrived, people followed, and local economies felt the effect. But the program was far from safe. The same poison that killed the last Irish eagles in the 1900s was still being laid in the 2000s. Illegal poisoning remained the greatest threat to the reintroduced population. Several satellite-tagged eagles simply stopped transmitting, their signals going dark in patterns consistent with deliberate killing. Avian influenza hit the breeding population in 2018. Storm Hannah destroyed active nests in 2019. Adverse weather battered birds on eggs across multiple seasons. But the biggest surprise was not the threats. It was what the surviving eagles started doing in places no one was watching. By 2020, the breeding population stood at 8 to 10 pairs, but the science was unambiguous. 100 eagles were not enough to absorb these losses and sustain a growing population. A second phase was essential. Phase 2 ran from 2020 to 2025, and it changed the strategy. Instead of concentrating releases in Killarney alone, the National Parks and Wildlife Service placed birds along the River Shannon, on the lower Shannon estuary, and in Waterford, spreading the geographic base so that no single disaster could wipe out a concentrated population. Another 145 Norwegian chicks were released, bringing the lifetime total to 245. The results surpassed projections. By 2024, 10 breeding pairs produced 13 wild-born chicks. By August 2025, when Ireland's Minister of State for Nature released the final 4 chicks in Killarney, 17 known pairs held territories spanning the country from Cork to Donegal. In Killarney National Park itself, chicks fledged successfully for the 4th consecutive year. The population was estimated at 150 individual eagles in the wild. Duncan Halley, the senior research scientist at Norway's Institute for Nature Research, who had coordinated the project for 18 years, said the project had worked on every level, from introduction to first breeding and now a stable population. He called it one of the highlights of his career. Norway's ambassador to Ireland called the program an inspiration for wildlife projects worldwide. And then the National Parks and Wildlife Service declared the reintroduction officially complete. No more Norwegian imports, no more aviaries, no more cages opening on the shores of Kerry lakes. From this point forward, the white-tailed eagles of Ireland are on their own. And that is where the story gets truly interesting. Because what the satellite data shows is not just a population surviving. It is a population making decisions that the models did not predict and triggering ecological changes that scientists are still working to measure. The first surprise was geographic. The program released birds in Kerry, along the Shannon, and in Waterford. But white-tailed eagles are now holding territories and breeding in counties that were never release sites. In 2024, a pair bred successfully in Northern Ireland for the first time in over 150 years. Those birds had been released on Lough Derg in Tipperary, but they travelled north on their own, crossed the border, and established a territory and habitat that no human had selected for them. The Northern Ireland Raptor Study Group confirmed the breeding. One scientist described the adrenaline rush of the moment she confirmed a chick was in the nest and realized the birds had not just nested, but successfully reared young in a jurisdiction the program had never formally entered. The eagles are choosing their own expansion path, and they are choosing well. The National Parks and Wildlife Service confirmed that breeding pairs are now established from Cork in the south right up to Donegal in the far north. A geographic spread that covers the length of Ireland and demonstrates the kind of autonomous range expansion that marks a genuinely self-sustaining population. And that was only the geographic surprise. What the eagles did to the ecosystem itself was something else entirely. White-tailed eagles are not passive residents. They are apex predators and prolific scavengers that sit at the top of a food web connecting fish, waterbirds, marine mammals, and terrestrial carrion. When they disappeared for a century, the systems beneath them drifted. Scavenger roles went unfilled. Nutrient cycling between marine and terrestrial environments slowed. Populations of prey species adjusted to the absence, and those adjustments became the new normal. Now the adjustments are reversing. In coastal areas where eagles have established, waterbird populations are being regulated by a predator that had not existed in living memory. Carrion that once decomposed untouched on shorelines is being consumed and redistributed. The eagles are not restoring the ecosystem to some imagined pristine state. They are reintroducing a process, a function that had been missing for over 100 years. The National Parks and Wildlife Service stated explicitly that this species plays an important part in protecting biodiversity, and that its return brings great benefit to Irish ecosystems. The full dimensions of that benefit are still being measured. 18 years of satellite tracking data from 245 tagged eagles represents one of the most comprehensive raptor datasets in European conservation history. What it reveals about dispersal, territory establishment, and mortality is still being analyzed, but the direction is clear. The third surprise was cultural. In Kerry, the eagles drew tourists. In Clare, they drew birdwatchers. In Glengariff, County Cork, a live-streamed eagle nest made the BBC list of the top 20 virtual nature attractions in the world. The economic argument for apex predator reintroduction, often abstract and contested before a project begins, became concrete the moment the first nest was visible from a village. The Irish name for the white-tailed eagle is Iola Mara, sea eagle. That name survived the extinction. For over 100 years, the word existed in the language without the animal it described. The lakes and coasts of Kerry and Clare and Galway carried a name for a bird that no living person had ever seen in Irish skies. Now the animal is back. The word means something again. And the nests being built in the old oaks of Killarney, sticks gathered from the lakeshore, packed with moss and seaweed, growing larger every season, will be added to by the same pairs year after year. If the pattern follows Scandinavian precedent, some of those nests could be in use for decades, for generations. 245 eagles, 18 years. A partnership between a country that lost its largest predator and a country that had enough to share. And a population that is now writing its own future across Irish skies without anyone opening a cage. But Ireland is not the only place where a returned species is reshaping a landscape in ways scientists did not predict. In our next video, we go to a place where a completely different animal, one that most people consider a pest, was released into a dead desert and built something so extraordinary that engineers are still trying to understand how it works. If you thought eagles were impressive ecosystem engineers, wait until you see what a 30-pound rodent can do with nothing but mud and sticks. You will never look at a river the same way again.